Alright, welcome to the stream. We're going to be making pizza today, which should be fun. And we're going to start off, because it takes the most time, with making the pizza sauce. So in the links to the stream, I have a New York style pizza sauce recipe, which I actually haven't made before. But I figured it'd be kind of fun to get started with that. It's going to take some time to kind of simmer down, which will give us some time to work with the pizza. And I was thinking maybe some breadsticks might be fun to do. So it's going to have us start off with whole peeled tomatoes. Yeah, you could do that. There are lots of reasons why you would want to do that. They run through all of them here. They are all very good reasons. I'm not going to do that because I'm lazy. So we're going to kind of get rid of it. We're going to go down the rest of the list here. And make sure we've got everything ready for our pizza sauce. And we're going to start off with, we're going to chop an onion. We're going to get our garlic chopped, our oregano ready, our pepper flakes. And then by the time we get all that started, then we should be in a good place to go with the rest of it. And the rest of it will go a lot faster. So we're going to start off with this onion here, and I'm just going to quickly take the paper off of it. This is going to give me an opportunity, I think, to espouse one of my favorite kitchen implements as we finish with all of this. You know, I know there's some really fast ways of peeling onions and prepping them. I do not know what those are. Well, I mean, I know what they are, but I'm paradoxically too lazy to spend the time to save myself a lot of time. It's kind of one of those vicious cycles. I think if I were just cut it in half, the paper is supposed to come off pretty easily. But I haven't really done it that way before, so it's not what I'm going to do. I'm just trying to get underneath this top layer. There it goes. Once that top layer comes off, the rest of it usually goes pretty fast. And yes, we're going to be stripping this all the layers off. No, not really. I usually strip off the top layer to make sure there's no bacteria that are hiding between the paper and that top layer, which is also why I don't cut it in half. All jokes aside about my laziness, because I don't want to accidentally carry through anything that's on the surface or underneath that first layer down to the lower sections of the onion. Alright, so we've got this peeled, and now I'm going to pull this off. Alright, I'm going to just chop this onion here. I also know that there are very fast ways to chop an onion. I don't really do any of them because they're fancy and this works well enough, and I'm not chopping enough onions for it to really matter. Tip about knives, make sure that they are sharp. Hone the blades whenever they start to get a little bit dull. It keeps it safer because you aren't having to use as much force on the knife. If you just kind of let it glide, it ends up meaning that you're much less likely to get hurt. I think this recipe only calls for a rough chop. Let's see. Yeah, it says onion halves, so technically I did more than I needed to, but whatever. I'm okay. Oh, you're supposed to discard the onions. That's probably why it's onion halves. Well, in that case, I guess I should probably grab another onion. And I'll push this stuff off into a container, and I will be able to use these tomorrow in a different recipe that I'm making. I guess that's why they often say that you should they say you should just read the instructions through all the way first. I actually sort of remember now that I was supposed to just cut them in half, but didn't think about it in time. All right. Alright, so we've got our onion chopped and put away for later. Like I said, meal prep for later in the week. We're just going to quickly do another onion, and then this time we're going to only chop it in half. People wonder why I go through so many onions. This is why. Also because onions are just great and they're used in everything. And hopefully most people that watch will be coming in late, so. They won't need to see how, I failed to follow the directions. I should have left that on, shouldn't I have? Oh well. This should leave plenty of big things that won't spread. Okie dokie. So we've got our half an onion. We'll have our tomatoes in a minute. Those are coming out of a can, so we don't really need to worry about that. Basil sprigs, so I'm not even chopping the basil. And then sugar. So it's time for us to move over to the stove, and we are going to proceed with turning all this into a sauce. All right. So, stove, pot or pan, and recipe. All the things that we probably are going to need. So we're going to start off by combining the butter and the oil. So we're going to need to have a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil, a tablespoon of unsalted butter. Got about, I'll just eyeball this. It's not too terribly important, but I'm going to take about a tablespoon of olive oil. And I've got some unsalted butter here. I'm going to take a tablespoon of that. Just going to kind of get that going underneath a medium heat. Just until the butter is fully melted. So just take a minute. We're going to kind of speed things along by chopping up the butter. There we go. Cool. So we're just going to let this melt for a minute. That'll just take a moment. Get our respond to a couple people here in chat. And I'm going to make sure my onions have been put away. Tell my burner is a little crooked. Spread this out a little bit. Let it all mix around. Cool. Alright, so that's now melted. We're close enough. And oh, there's something we forgot to get the garlic going. Let's see, just grated. Yeah, I don't really have a microplane grater. So we're going to turn the heat off on this, and we're going to come back over and I'll show you what I'm going to do with the garlic. So the garlic, tilt this back down here so you can actually see what's going on. We're going to have a couple cloves of garlic here. And once we get that paper off of it, now, alright, there we go. So the garlic, instead of putting it on the microplane, we're just going to mince it up really fine. And I'm actually going to use 3 cloves because I am a fan of garlic. If you're following along, you can just do 2 cloves as the recipe calls for, but hey, I like garlic. And so will anyone else that eats this pizza. Finish getting this paper off here because that is my nemesis when it comes to any of the cooking. It's always the paper on anything, whether it be onions or garlic. And yes, I'm fully aware I could just crush it and then the paper comes straight off. And that's probably what I should be doing, but I always am afraid that I'm going to miss a little bit, and while that won't make a difference in the final product, I will know that I could have done something a little bit better. And therefore I spend an extra 2 or 3 minutes pulling paper off of garlic and off of onions. Also, it's kind of fun to just kind of get it all off and peel it off. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I'm probably the only one that feels that way. Alright, got our garlic here. I'm going to kind of take off the ends for each one. This again is where a very sharp knife comes in handy, as long as you make sure you don't accidentally run the knife backwards into your hand. Now we are going to crush it. Should be 3 crushed cloves of garlic. And we're going to just very finely mince this. Be very careful when you start getting near your fingers. This can and will take off a fingertip if you are not careful. So pay attention to what you're doing Take your time. We can't all be a professional chef. I certainly am not. I am being very generous, a moderate amateur. Alright, we've got our garlic here. I'm going to grab a pastry knife, which is one of my favorite things ever. We're just going to transfer this over. Take the camera with me. I'm going to just transfer this over to our butter, which now has a knife in it, which is always the best way to have your butter. Anytime you can manage to get a knife inside your saucepan, do it. It greatly enhances the flavor. Alright, so that is the garlic bit. I'm going to make sure the heat's back on this. We're going to add in the oregano. So for this, it says a teaspoon of dried oregano. So I happen to have oregano right here. I'm just going to put in, that's about a teaspoon, maybe a little bit more. Okay, we're going to put in a pinch of red pepper flakes, which in this case I'm using red chili pepper flakes. I don't know, is that a pinch? That's probably a pinch. Should get a little toasted by this. Now a large pinch of salt. So I once again have the big box of salt. It says large pinch. That was 2 medium pinches. And that one brings it up to a large pinch. Kind of make sure all this gets inside that wonderful butter oil combo, which is going to really help with the flavor. So kind of keep these stirring for about 2 or 3 minutes. We're really looking for it to be fragrant. It shouldn't take that long. We're going to kind of keep it moving so that stuff doesn't start burning on us. And then I'm going to take it off the heat briefly to explain what's going to happen next and to pull out my basil and all of that good stuff. Gotta tell you, it's smelling pretty good. One day they're going to have an attachment for YouTube that lets you smell what's going on, which will both be a blessing and a curse. Because there will be plenty of things like this where it will be great. But there will be other situations where you're like, well, why did they invent that? Alright, that's smelling pretty fragrant to me. So we're going to take this off the heat briefly. And I'm going to grab the basil. Now, since I actually have a basil plant on my counter here, I'm just going to grab the scissors and cut off a couple sprigs. Alright, calls for 2 6-inch sprigs. Yeah, it's probably roughly equivalent. We're going to toss that in. We're also going to toss in our onion halves, which gave us so much trouble. And I'll go ahead and toss those in. Back over here. And we're going to bring in our tomatoes, which I know that it says you should be using whole tomatoes. I'm not using whole tomatoes. I'm using diced tomatoes because they're a little bit faster to prepare, and I did not particularly feel like getting my food processor out. And the difference for what we're doing is not going to be too bad. So we're going to spend a lot of time, a lot of difficult work unzipping the can and gently pouring in the tomatoes. As this simmers, these will get a lot softer and mushier, and it should be fine if we go through at the end and we kind of make sure that we've broken up the tomatoes as much as possible. Alrighty, so got those. What am I forgetting? Sugar. Yes. So it says a teaspoon of sugar. So let me go ahead and grab my sugar. Alright, so we've got our sugar here. I'm just going to grab, that's about a half teaspoon, 3/4, and that's about a teaspoon. And I'm going to bring in just a little bit extra more because sugar is fantastic. It will really help to bring out and break down some of these flavors. Alright, we're going to bring this up to a simmer here. Make sure that we've got that turned up a little bit. Once we're at a simmer, we'll turn down the heat. Spread this basil out a little bit. No, it doesn't really need to be spread out, but the symmetry is just nice. And we're going to let this come up to a simmer. It shouldn't take that long. The pan was already pretty hot. It smells pretty great. I mean, I honestly haven't made this recipe before. It's been on my to-do list for a while, but I have discovered by making shakshuka, which is something that I will make that on stream at some point soon. But shakshuka is pretty great, and the smell of simmering tomatoes is just wonderful. So this is coming up to a simmer here. So what we're going to do, we're going to turn down the heat. And the point is that this is going to slowly simmer away for a while. Says about an hour. I don't know that it'll really take quite that long, but that's okay. We've got stuff that we can do in the meantime. We're going to go ahead and turn this down. And it smells amazing. The fire roasted, I went with the fire roasted tomatoes for this to add a little bit of an extra richness of flavor. And I'm really hoping that that's going to turn out well. We're going to see. All right, we've turned it down. Stir this up a little bit. And again, when we get closer to the end, these diced tomatoes, I'm going to go through and I'm going to crush them in the inside the pan, and that's why we didn't do the whole food processor. But yeah, shakshuka is fantastic. Like I said, I will be making some soon. Not tonight, but soon. All right, so let's go back over here to our cutting board, which is now kind of messy, and we are going to talk about the dough and actually making pizza. For this, I'm going to actually widen this out a little bit because that way it feels less like I have like a 3-inch thing to be in. I can actually move around a little bit more. I already prepared the dough for uh, for tonight's pizza stream. Um, so I'm not going to be preparing pizza dough, but I sort of am, because I usually add something else in to fill in the time while things cook, both in real life and on the stream. And so tonight what I'm going to do is I'm going to be making breadsticks, which is conveniently enough done with pizza dough and goes well with pizza. So we kind of have this cleared off a little bit. And it'll let me demo how to make actual pizza dough. So for this one, I'm going to be using Kenji Lopez's Foolproof Pan Pizza recipe, which is also what I have in the video description. It's not actually what I made my dough out of tonight. I'm trialing a new type of dough, but that's with sourdough starter, and I figured that many people probably do not have sourdough starter that they can just make pizza dough with. If you do, that's great. There's a lot of great sourdough pizza recipes out there, and I highly encourage you to check those out. All right. So, how do we make pizza dough? Well, that's pretty simple. We're going to take a bowl. We're going to start putting in all of the ingredients. I use weights for all of this because cooking with weights is way easier when you're doing anything with breads or with flours or even liquids to a degree. It just lets you be a lot more consistent in how you approach it, as opposed to if you use weights or if you use measures rather, it can be a little inconsistent from one recipe to the other. So we are going to do 400 grams to start with of bread flour. All-purpose flour works fine. I've done it both ways. Today I'm using bread flour because I've got a lot of bread flour, and I've got lots of all-purpose flour, but I've got lots of bread flour tonight, so we're going to use bread flour for this. And we're going to do 400 grams of this, which if you insist on using measures, there's nothing wrong with that. That's going to be about 2.5 cups. It's about 360, 375, 390, 395. All right, 400 grams. 400 grams of bread flour. And then to that we're going to add in a little bit of salt. I've got the tomato sauce bubbling away, and it is, oh man, the smell is just amazing. So we're going to say this is 10 grams of kosher salt, so again it's by weight. Actually quite a lot of salt. 8 grams, 9, that's 10 grams of salt. Okay, there we go. 10 grams of salt. Then we're going to add in some instant yeast. I suspect you could probably do sourdough starter at this point if you wanted to. I'm just going to use yeast. I can remember where I put the yeast. Alright. So for the yeast, we're going to use about 4 grams of that, so it's actually quite a lot of yeast. I always smell the yeast, just because I love the smell of yeast. It smells great. That's about 4 grams. We're going to add just a little bit extra so that it rises just a little bit faster, and that's 5 grams. All right. And now here we're going to be adding in 275 grams of water. So go ahead and grab some water. And that's going to be about, it's about a cup plus a little bit if you're using measures. So 275 grams. It's about 125, 150, it's about 200. And that's 277, which is close enough. Alrighty. This is the point where you would mix everything together, which is indeed what we're going to be doing. However, since I am making breadsticks, this is where I'm departing from the recipe just a little bit. Instead of immediately mixing everything together, I'm going to take a bunch of garlic and I'm going to dump it in here so it all gets incorporated in. And for this, I'm just going to use up some of the minced garlic that I happen to have on hand. Because this is a container, it's getting close to its expiration date, so I've got to use it up, and frankly, I can't think of a better way to use it than through garlic breadsticks. This is the way that I make garlic breadsticks, by the way. I don't know what I haven't looked up any actual garlic breadstick recipes. I'm not sure how many of them have you put the garlic in now versus later. I'm kind of doing it now because I've always kind of figured that it helps the flavor kind of soak through. I have absolutely no idea if that's the case. I've also had good results by making plain pizza dough and then kind of just adding it all in later. That also works. It seems to work no matter what because it's garlic. And garlic is, all kinds of awesome. Use a little bit of extra water there to get that out. Alrighty. And now we're going to mix all this together. Stand mixer works too, but I don't have a great way of showing the stand mixer with the camera, so we're just going to kind of mix everything together until there's no more dry flour remaining. We can add a little bit of extra water if we need to. It's not supposed to be an incredibly dry dough, but it's not supposed to be a very wet dough either. Yeah, I think we're going to need to add a little bit of extra water here. And that's the thing about, yes, garlic is absolutely the god's ambrosia. There is nothing better than garlic in this world. Okay, there's probably a few things better like chocolate, but it's kind of neck and neck. Alright, so we're just going to add in just a little bit of water here. Great thing to remember about baking and cooking is that a lot of these recipes are very dependent on like local humidity and altitude in some cases. Seems like a lot of chefs live near the coast in major cities, so sometimes they're like, oh yes, this works 100% of the time. I'm like, yes, it does when your humidity is whatever it is next to the coast, and you're at 0 feet sea level. I'm like 2,000 feet above sea level here, or 1,500 feet, I'm not sure. I am some number of feet above sea level, and I do not find that my recipes work perfectly every single time without adjustment. So I adjust them. And as a cook, you should not be afraid to adjust them because, I mean, honestly, when it comes down to it, a recipe is just a starting point, and you fill in what makes it delicious for you. All right, so we've got this. I'm gonna dump out this water here, and I'm just gonna do a quick little transference for a moment, just because I think it'll probably be fairly easy to get it out of that again. And we're just gonna quickly spray down the inside of this with some oil, just to prevent it from sticking. This is olive oil because I got tired of having to spread butter and stuff around. So apparently they sell olive oil in spray form. And I thought, that seems like a good idea. Turn all that back out. Stick this stuff in the sink. Grab our handy dandy towel. And we're going to cover this and let it rise for at least a little bit. And while we do that, we're going to go back, we're going to take a look at the sauce. And we're going to talk a little bit about some pizza dough. And how to make pizza very easily, because I'm not doing traditional, on the pizza stone, flat pizza. I'm doing pan pizza tonight because it's a heck of a lot easier. It's a heck of a lot faster. It's a lot of just kind of sitting around and waiting for stuff to be ready. I don't like waiting, but if I have to wait for pizza, I will wait for pizza. Alright, so let's take a look back here at the sauce. Drop this back down to maybe not quite as far down as it was before. Let's see if I can get this centered a little bit better. Yeah, and you can kind of see it's just bubbling away. Yeah, I've had the coconut oil spray. I'm not really quite sure why I didn't just get more of that, after I ran out, but for whatever reason I didn't. We're just going to kind of, let's see if I can get this be a little bit better covered here, because we want the basil and our onion are the aromatics. They're what's going to help give this a lot of extra dimension and flavor. And if we let it just sit out, it's going to lose some of that. We probably also added in a few other things as well, but you don't want to overwhelm it. You want the rich tomato taste to come through in your sauce. I mean, without that tomato and without the cheese, which we'll start shredding some cheese in a minute or two. Without that, you're essentially just making flatbread that doesn't have much flavor. The actual dough, while it can have a lot of good flavor, it doesn't always. So we add on layers of flavor, and to a certain point, the more layers that you have of complexity and flavor, the better everything tastes together. Speaking of which, I'm going to give this a quick taste. It's definitely a little bit early for it, but we're just going to kind of grab a little bit from over here. Yes, I know the traditional tasting implement is a spoon. I'm using a fork, so sue me. Yep, that's pretty good. Still a little ways to go, but I'm definitely getting in some of the basil there. I actually think I probably could have added a little bit more garlic, but that's not something that we need to shy away from. We can actually add some more garlic, because you're going along, you get to make those decisions. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back, chop up some garlic. I'm going to toss it in, and then we'll get to talking about toppings and getting some of those prepared. Because what is pizza without pizza toppings? And again, my my answer to that is just bread. Delicious, delicious bread. But in the end, it is just bread. Alrighty. So, got this. Let's get this angled. I swear I spent half my time, on these, just adjusting the camera. Based on what I tasted, it might be kind of premature because I know that some of the flavors are still developing, but I also know that roasting that garlic, as we did at the start, will mellow the flavors a little bit. I really do kind of want that garlic to come through. We're gonna add 2 more cloves, which brings us up to 5 cloves of garlic that we've added. But again, this is all about personal taste. You might like more garlic, you might like less garlic. This isn't, we're not cooking for Domino's or, Papa John's or Pizza Hut or any of the other major brands which, can make delicious stuff, but they are, in the end, catering to the combined tastes of all of their clientele, because they can't possibly do a customized pizza for every single person that, orders from them. They have, they've got generalized things that you can, like generalized car models almost, you can buy from, you can select from, but what we're doing here is it's like we're taking all those car models and we're saying, okay, I want to combine all the features from these 3, and then I'll buy that. And that's what cooking for yourself does. It lets you choose all the options that you want and get rid of the ones that you don't. I also suspect that if I actually have one of the microplanes, that the garlic flavor would probably come through a little bit better. I just find it's one of those things that I don't need nearly as often as I feel like a specialized piece of kitchen equipment really kind of requires. Like a knife, I can buy a nice knife like this one, and or actually I've got another one that's coming in soon, but I use it 8 times a week or more. I mean, actually I use this knife way more than that, and the next knife that I get I'll use way more as well, because I've got another one of these too. I've got one that's just a more basic silver one. I prefer the handle on this one, so I use it a little bit more, but I use the other one a lot as well. And so something like that, it's worth investing in and having around. But for something like one of those microplane graters, while they are fantastic at what they do, I haven't seen the utility for myself at this point. There are plenty of things that they would be great with, but I can make do with a little bit of extra time, and the cost of buying it and then storing it just hasn't been worth it to me yet. All right, I'm going to dump these in. And give them a quick little mix around. Just to make sure that they are fully, whatever you want to call that, incorporated. There we go. Alright, so, pizza toppings. Pizza toppings get kind of contentious. We all know that stereotypically, pineapple on pizza is not a great choice. I happen to disagree with that pretty strongly. I think that pineapple on pizza is great. You get this burst of acid and this burst of sweet, this combination that just lights up those taste buds. It's all about that layering flavors, right? So if you combine those with something like pepperoni, which is a little bit saltier and a little bit spicier, it works well. It's a good pairing. So what we're doing today, or what I am doing, and you can do whatever toppings you personally prefer, but I am going to be doing pineapple and pepperoni, and I don't know, maybe brown some turkey or something and put it on there as well. I really haven't done that before. It's just kind of a passing thought. I don't know really how well that would taste. I think that adds another. The flavors there are too similar to the pepperoni, and that has that meat taste. And I don't think that starts to complement anymore. I think that starts to really kind of detract. All right, so for this, we could use canned pineapple. There's nothing wrong with canned pineapple. I have some, right here, big pineapple chunks, 100% pineapple juice, which also tastes great when you drink it. So hey, but when you can, fresh is always better. So you've got a pineapple, and looking at that video preview, yeah, this is gonna need to get a little bit taller. All right, that should be better. So we've got one genuine pineapple here. It even still has the label on it, which appears to tell me that it is sustainable somehow. Sustainably grown. That's nice. I always wonder how you verify that. Like, how do you verify that something's actually sustainably grown, other than, or was it just, yes, we totally sustainably grew this, and I'm not doubting that it wasn't sustainably grown. I'm just saying I don't know how you verify that. All right, so we've got one fairly large pineapple here. So I think what we're going to do, we're going to take off the top. We're going to strip down the sides, and then we're going to proceed with cubing it up into small cubes, all while it tries to eat us, because the enzymes and the acids in this literally do try to digest you as you cut them, apparently. I mean, I haven't done a study on that myself. I've read it online somewhere. So it could be any sorts of things. All right, so we're going to grab another cutting board, because I don't want to do this on the bamboo. It'll kind of soak through. It's not too bad. You just wash it off quickly, but So we're going to grab a nice green one, which means anyone that's downloading a copy of this later can put all sorts of very interesting images directly underneath the pineapple after keying out for the green. Yeah, if you've been here earlier, we were talking about tomato sauce. We've got some tomato sauce going. We made breadsticks. We're kind of waiting for that to rise right now. But right now, at least you got here in time for the toppings discussion, where we are making pineapple to put on top of the pizza, which is incredibly controversial. But we will proceed despite the controversy. We're just going to go ahead, cut off the top, and that's not quite enough. There we go. Actually, if you don't cut off just this stem part, and you cut off, the actual bit here and maybe a little bit extra, you can grow a pineapple straight off of the tops of one of these. I very thoroughly killed it by cutting it where I did, but I have another pineapple top growing on my countertop, because as I've mentioned, pineapples are delicious, and someday, 6 to 12 years, or however long it takes for a pineapple to fully grow from a top, I will have my own pineapple, and the process can continue, the cycle can continue. Alright, we're also going to cut off the bottom here. Again, we're trying to be just above that root there. That's probably pretty good. And I know it looks like I'm cutting off a lot, and I kind of am, but there will be way more than enough. More than we can use. I'll be able to have snacks later. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and just trim this down. Yes, food that fights back. Everyone talks about food fights. And pineapple is kind of the best at that. Well, actually, that's probably not true. There's probably better ones out there, but it's the one that gets sold in grocery stores the most, which I would argue that spread is an equally important part when it comes to effectiveness of fighting back against the people who are trying to eat you. Trim away a few of these extra eyes here because those are not fun to bite into. It is a bush, and that makes you angry. Yeah, I do need a compost bin. There's not really a great place to put a compost bin in a apartment, however. I've looked into what that would take. I could do vermiculture, but there's a lot of different ways in which that can go wrong. Or in an apartment, they can kind of burst open and spill liquid, and they're kind of heavy, and they can have a bad smell, and most importantly, they do not they can't last outside on the deck or on my balcony because it gets too cold. All right, let me wash off my hands. I'm going to give the tomato sauce a quick stir. Alright, that tomato sauce is looking and smelling pretty delicious. So what we're going to do here is we're going to finish up with the pineapple. Cut out that stalk in the center here, which is not very fun to bite into. Just going to kind of come over here. This. Don't cut yourself on your knife. Because again, a sharp knife is a safe knife, and yet you aren't using a ton of extra force to push it down, which means you're less likely to slice off the finger. You're far more likely to do accidental little cuts, but frankly, in the grand scheme of things, little cuts like that don't matter too much. Because how often did you just, kind of casually gripping the tip of your blade, right? Pretty rarely. Of course, I did accidentally give myself a small cut earlier, so really, am I wanting to talk? Right, we're dicing up some of these a little bit smaller than the others, just because it'll be easier to put on the pizza. So these will be the reserved ones we have for our pizza. I'm going to go through and I'm going to quickly cut up the rest, take out the centers, and drop those into a lock and lock for later. For now, for this stuff, we're just going to slide these into a bowl, and that'll be what we use on our pizza. I might put a little bit extra in there. A little bit of extra pineapple is always a good thing when it comes to pizzas, in my personal opinion, and anyone that says differently is wrong. Because if you were saying differently, then you'd say that I had a different opinion of what I actually have, and I think I know what my opinion is. Probably. Most of the time, at least. Alright. Got that. For these, we're not chopping up into little pieces. We're just going to get a few big chunks in order to save and put aside for later. Well, I certainly hope it tastes as good as it looks. I agree, it does taste, it does look pretty good. And at least the tomato sauce over there, and I'll show you guys how that's going in a moment. The tomato sauce is smelling amazing. I was thinking earlier today, oh, I should prepare some stuff ahead of time so that I can, just kind of show how things, turn out, faster. I kind of wish that I had, just so that I could have already eaten all of this before making it again. Alright, we are going to put all of this away. I can enjoy it later. Put this away as well. And that way we're back to our lovely bamboo. Alright, so let's take a look at the tomato sauce and kind of see how that's going. And somewhere here is the correct angle for it. There we go. Alright, so this is our tomato sauce. It's looking pretty good. It's reducing down pretty nicely. As I stir it around, you can see it's definitely solidified a lot, which is exactly what we want to see happen. This will be a slightly chunkier tomato sauce, which I am 100% okay with. So we're going to turn this down a little bit more just so that it's on low, so that it stays warm, and we're going to cover it. Kind of let those flavors continue to soak into each other, but we won't lose as much moisture. Alright, and then back to what we're putting on top of the tomato sauce. We've got our we've got our pineapple. The pepperoni isn't anything particularly special for this. I just got some pepperoni from the local supermarket. So the large white things are onion. So it's 2 onion halves that are dropped into there, and we'll pull them out. There's some of the aromatics that we have in there, along with the fresh basil off of my countertop garden. And yeah, I do have a lot of garlic in there because I like a decent amount of garlic, and when I tasted it a little bit earlier, it could have used some more garlic. So we did that. Let's see how our breadsticks are going. So it looks like this is indeed starting to rise a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. Since we're just doing breadsticks with this, it'll puff up a little bit more in the oven. So I'm not too concerned about that. That's looking pretty good to me. Yes, good bet. Good bet. Alright, so cheese. In any sort of pizza, Well, I say that, and then I started to say that, and then I realized that I was completely wrong. I was going to say that you need a decent amount of cheese, but there's a number of pizzas out there that are very good with minimal cheese, like Pizza Margarita, for one, or Margarita Pizza, which is delicious, and that just comes from the simple flavors of the sauce and the dough, the pizza the pizza dough, and then a little bit of scattered mozzarella here and there, and that is pretty delicious all on its own. So you don't need to have cheese for pizza, but it definitely helps. So we're going to have some cheese. And so for this, I'm going to grab some mozzarella. And we're going to shred our own, because the stuff that you get pre-shredded has potato starch or cellulose or other stuff that's on it as an anti-caking agent, because otherwise by the time you got it, it would have all just gone back into one big block. And the anti-caking agent is there to prevent that from happening, but it also means that it doesn't melt. It doesn't melt correctly. So in order to get that proper cheese on a pizza, you've got to shred your own, or somehow else figure out how to get rid of that caking agent. And getting rid of it just seems way harder than just shredding your own. So I'm going to grab a box grater, and we're going to shred up a couple blocks of mozzarella. And box graters are great for this because they let you go through a lot very quickly. You just get to grate down an entire block fast, and it contains all the cheese, you know, where it falls, which makes it a lot easier to use on other types of graters. Also, they happen to be most standard graters, so I don't really know why I'm explaining why you'd use a box grater, but sorry about the audio. I'm running it off of my phone this time, so I'll have to look into that. I need to get a proper mic for this. It's on the list. What I was planning on using ended up not working. OBS, which is what I use to stream to YouTube, it goes from my phone back to my computer, and then from there out to YouTube. OBS is not liking my audio setup for more than one day at a time, so it always takes some time to try and figure out how it's going to like it today. And today this was the setup that it liked. Last time it liked it when I used a headset. The time before that it was completely fine with my phone again. So maybe next stream it'll be like, yes, you can use a headset again. On the other hand, who knows? Alright, so that's one block. We're going to do another block just because it's always better to have a little bit extra cheese than not enough. This one we're just going to start with half a block and see, because that'll be a full block. I had used about half of the other block. So we'll look at doing about a full block of mozzarella on this cheese, or on this pizza, rather. And so as I was saying earlier, we're doing a pan pizza because that's the easiest type of pizza to make when you make it in a home kitchen. Because as long as you've got a cast iron, or you could probably do it with a stainless steel pan as well, but a cast iron pan especially, because due to the heat retention, it will really help to get that crust nice and crispy with that extra texture that you like, or at least that I like. So the pizza just kind of sits in there, and you don't have to worry about filling with a stone, although you certainly can, and I do sometimes. It's just easy. You toss the dough in there a while ahead of time, which I did before the stream started, so by now it should be doing pretty good. Grab something to put all this in. And we're going to try and not lose much cheese. There we go, a bunch of perfectly shredded cheese. We're going to use, once again, my favorite tool ever, pastry cutter or pastry knife, bench scraper. Clean stuff up with very little mess. Yep, that's good cheese. Put that away. Pop this back. There, so it doesn't go bad. So I have to pick up a few more things that would take some good mozzarella. So I think that by now we have all three components of our pizza. We've got our pizza dough, which I'll bring out here in a second. We've got our pizza sauce, which is still simmering away and kind of adding that additional flavor there, but it is ready to go. And we've got at least two of our three toppings, and the third one, like I said, isn't anything particularly special, so I'm pulling that one out of a bag when the time comes. Alrighty, let's pull out our pizza. So this is our pizza dough, which has been sitting there for a while, and I apparently forgot to grease the plastic wrap, but that's okay, we've got plenty of dough. It's been sitting and relaxing for a while. I made this stuff out of a sourdough starter, so it's got a little bit of extra sourdough flavor. I recommend that. I've done it once or twice before, and it is delicious. But if you're in a crunch for time or you don't have a sourdough, that's perfectly fine. Basically, any pizza that you make is going to end up being delicious because pizza. Caprese recipes. I'll have to try that. Alright, so we're gonna just kind of stretch this out a little bit, kind of push it down and up. We're gonna try and make sure everything's kind of a consistent thickness. So there's a couple thin spots here, and this is pretty sticky. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of oil and use that. Not much, just a quick spray, just to kind of reduce the stickiness so that we are able to handle this. We're going to make sure there's no air bubbles underneath, because there can be air bubbles that form and develop, and those will create holes in your pizza, which you probably don't want. I mean, maybe you do, but I feel like at some point it stops being, you know, traditional pizza and starts being something else. And I'll show you what else I do to help combat that. We're going to kind of push this up the sides a little bit because it is a pan pizza after all. This one's going to be, I think this is a 10-inch pan. So this is all based off of J. Kenzie Lopez's recipe, or J. Kenzie Lopez's recipe rather, and it's a good recipe. Doesn't take too much time to make. It's dead easy. You just kind of drop it in, and it expands itself over the course of a couple of hours. There's no real kneading after the first initial, initial mix. You just kind of let it do its thing. You flip it over once or twice, and it works pretty well. All right, I'm going to grab a fork. going to try and dock this pizza dough just to make sure that any air bubbles that form have an easy way to escape. So it's less likely to puff up. It'll stay kind of a more consistent thickness throughout. This is an optional step. I do it sometimes, sometimes I don't. If you don't, sometimes you end up with a really, I mean, most of the time it's fine, but every now and then you end up with something that ends up being like the entire thickness of the pan due to the pizza puffing up, and it's still delicious. I still happily eat it, but it's, you know, sometimes you don't want that. Alright, so we've got our pizza dough, and we've got our tomato sauce. So we're going to go ahead and take this over to the tomato sauce. We're going to put it on, then we're going to load it up with the toppings and pop it into the oven. And then while it's cooking, oh, I should actually probably warm up the oven, would probably be a good idea. Let's see, this is supposed to be at, oh, I don't know, 375, 400? Does this not actually say? Oh, 550, alright. I don't think my oven goes up to 550, but we'll find out. Alright, so we're going to bring this over here and drop it down again. And then adjust it a little bit more. Sorry about all the shakiness. So we can take another look at the tomato sauce. And we're going to see how high up my oven goes. I think it goes up to 500. I don't know that it goes any higher than that. Nope, only goes up to 500. Cool. So that's going to take a couple minutes to preheat, but that's fine because it's going to take us a couple minutes to get this whole thing topped and ready to go. So if we look at our delicious, delicious tomato sauce here, it is looking pretty good. Let's taste it. Just want to see how it's turned out. Yeah, that's pretty good. I could probably use a little bit more salt, but it's got all the flavors are there. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pull out the basil, pull out the onion. I'm not going to hold this in my hand because it gets pretty hot. We've got the basil, we've got this onion here. Actually, I can use this onion for something else. That onion's been pretty well infused with this delicious basil and tomato concoction, so that's going to be good on something else. I can think of a couple things I could do with that. All right, we're going to pull out this bit of basil here, which is extremely hot because it was up against the hot pan. All right, any other little bits of basil in here that need to come out? No? All right. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to grab a pastry cutter, and we're just going to kind of go through here and make sure that everything that it's not quite as chunky as it is now. This is to replace the fact that we did not do the food processor step at the start because, frankly, food processors are a little bit difficult to clean, and I did not feel like doing that tonight. So I skipped that step in favor of doing this later on. And in fairness, you could also do it with like a hand blender or something like that, but see, all those involve multiple things that need to be cleaned, whereas this means you only need to clean one thing. Well, it also means the stuff in the kitchen is a little stuck in there, but that's okay. This will add that extra little bit of liquid in there from all of the tomatoes, which now that everything is kind of simmered down to where there's not much liquid left in it. I mean, relative to where we started. That'll be welcome. We do want it to be fairly thick, but to the exact chunkiness that it was, probably not quite as much. Alright, that's looking pretty good to me. So, what we're going to do is we're going to bring over our pizza dough. We're going to top it with this delicious, delicious tomato sauce. Oh, I was going to put in a little bit extra salt into that one. Alright, we're going to pop a little bit of extra salt in here. Just another couple pinches. Going to make sure that it's well stirred. Get that salt incorporated. Then it's time to top our pizza and pop it in the oven. Alright, so we've got our pizza here. Take a few scoops. It does not take nearly as much as you might think to top pizza. So there's actually quite a lot of sauce here that we're not going to be using for this pizza. And it will be fantastic on other things over the next day or two for me. Yeah, I think that'll be pretty good. I've actually slightly overdone it with the sauce. Just using about that much. We'll go out to the edges, why not? That lets us put our toppings out to the edge as well, which means we'll get a delicious, delicious crust. Yeah, alright, that should be pretty good. Cool. I'm going to take this off the heat for now. I'm going to cover it so that it continues to stay warm. And then we've got our pizza. That's going to be pretty good. Alright, let's go back over and we're going to finish topping this. Alright, you can come over and help me eat it. That sounds good. Okay, so we've got our fresh mozzarella right here. We're just going to kind of get that all spread around. I try to not be too stingy when it comes to my mozzarella because it's delicious. This is also why I don't make the pizza as often as I probably could, because I am too tempted by mozzarella. And we're going to take some of our pineapple. Just going to kind of spread that around and accidentally toss them on the floor. I'm sure the cat will appreciate it. It's a time-honored tradition, you know, toss stuff on the floor accidentally so that your pets can enjoy it. A nice semi-random sprinkling in there. I want to make sure there's lots of pineapple to go with all the pepperoni we're going to add. Now let me go ahead and grab some of the pepperoni. It's a funny story. I was going through and ordering groceries and I completely forgot how big 20 ounces is, or 32 ounces rather, 21 ounces. And I was like, that's like half a pound or something. Alright, we should be live again. Hopefully. I'll find out here in a moment, I'm sure. Alright, yep, alright, cool. Stream caught up. Looks like we're now live. Sorry about that. So I use a phone for this. It's connected up to a big battery bank, but apparently it decided it didn't see the battery bank and that its power levels are getting low, so it just turned itself off. That happens. Not sure why it didn't happen before, but at least now it's something else to check. The ending of the pepperoni story was essentially that I put a ton of pepperoni on everything over the pineapple, and then spread a ton more cheese on top. Popped it into the oven a couple minutes ago. Let's see how it's doing. Yeah, got another probably 8 minutes on that. So it's time to move on to breadsticks. Because basically breadsticks are all kinds of awesome in a completely complementary way to pizza. Hopefully my audio is working now too. I always kind of worry about that not coming back up if there's ever a glitch. But I'm sure that someone will tell me here in a moment. Alright, so we have our breadstick dough, which has risen a little bit, not a lot, but that's fine because we weren't really looking for it to do a ton of rising, since we're looking more for it to puff up inside the oven. So I'm going to grab a baking sheet. We're going to put some parchment paper down, and we're going to get ready to bake these garlic breadsticks. And so for this one, we're going to be using a rimless baking sheet. The reason I'm using a rimless one as opposed to my normal rimmed ones is because I'm looking for the tops to crisp pretty quickly, while the insides stay a little bit softer. Having a rimmed baking sheet interrupts the flow of air through the oven, and so the tops of stuff won't crisp as fast, which is fine for something like cookies where you're looking to bake everything kind of all at once. But when you're baking certain types of breads, you would rather have the air be able to flow freely across, either side and then up. Okay, good. Glad to hear that everything's working again. Thank you. All right, let's grab some parchment paper here. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but Ryan, the oven is at 500 degrees, and I'm pretty certain there was a book that told me that paper burns at 451 degrees Fahrenheit, and that is true. But parchment paper is treated, so supposedly it's not supposed to combust until some higher amount. I don't actually know what that is. Sure, it says on here somewhere, but I don't see it. Oh, non-stick and oven safe up to 425. Well, I've definitely gone way higher than 425 ovens. So, not sure why it says it's only 425. We're going to turn out our lovely dough here onto the baking sheet, onto the parchment paper, which I really should have greased first. I need to remember to stop just kind of tossing stuff out onto it before making sure that there's a proper amount of oil on there to prevent it from sticking, especially when it comes to stuff like dough. Or I really should have, what I should have done is probably kept this in there and then turned out logs that I could have shaped. That's essentially what we're doing. We're just going to grab strips of it, kind of shape them a little bit, make sure there's plenty of garlic in them, because this is, of course, we are, of course, making garlic breadsticks, because, as was established earlier in the stream, garlic is all sorts of awesome. And we are going to just grab hunks of this. Well, this could end up being exciting. What do you mean? It's already exciting. Oh, you mean in case the parchment paper catches on fire. Yeah, the delay between when you guys see stuff and when I say stuff is always, it's always kind of fun. I'm never quite entirely certain exactly what that delay is. I think it's somewhere between 30 seconds and a minute. So it just means I have to do a lot of remembering what I said a minute ago. The fire department's already on speed dial. I just have to dial 3 numbers. If that's not speed dial, I don't know what is. And again, we're just kind of very roughly shaping this. It doesn't need to be perfect. I could honestly bake the whole thing as just one big thing, and I have before, and it comes out great. We're mostly just doing this for ease of, popping them off later. And to kill a little bit of time while we wait for that pizza to finish baking. Alrighty. Got that, and then I think we'll be able to get one nice large one out of this. We just want to make sure that it's large due to its length and not so much its width, because if it's too wide, it will bake at a different rate from all of the others. And then we'll end up having one that is raw in the middle, which is really not what we're looking for. So we're kind of looking for consistent widths across all of these. Alrighty, yeah, that's pretty close. I'm going to wash off my hands, and we'll get ready to set this in the oven as well and check on the pizza, which should be getting close to when it comes out. Actually, one thing we can do with this leftover mozzarella here, we're just going to kind of sprinkle this a little bit over these. They're not fully cheesy breadsticks, but a little bit of cheese on them really can't hurt, and it'll go along well with the rest of the pizza. And it means I don't have to figure out a way to store, a quarter cup of mozzarella. So the mozzarella would otherwise just get thrown away or snacked upon. So at least this way it's used somehow. Stick this in here and move these over to be cleaned. We're going to check on that pizza. Here, I'll bring this over here so you can kind of see what's going on with that. I know it's a lot of black and difficult to see right now. But I think that's looking pretty good in there. So it's got another probably a couple minutes. The top is going to crisp first. It's just kind of the way that it is. You can see I've got that pizza stone in the bottom there. I'm going to trim up this parchment paper while the camera looks at the oven. I'm just trimming it up to make sure that there's nothing that's going to catch fire, because 500 degrees is pretty hot. These breadsticks will cook faster than the pizza does. Alrighty, let's see if we can slip this in past that oven thermometer and without hitting the camera. Let me move the camera back. I'm about to either burn myself or knock over the camera. Alrighty. So we're probably another 3 or so minutes away from being able to pop that pizza out. So I'm going to go ahead and probably mute this for a moment. Set up the camera here a little bit differently so that you can see inside, and I'm just going to leave it like this for about another 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to mute everything in the meantime. Or actually, if anyone has any questions about any of the baking or cooking, this would probably be a good time to ask that as well. So if you've got any questions about how I do anything or why I do anything, it's probably a good time to ask that. And let's see how that's doing. Oh, that's looking pretty good. Yeah, almost there. Since it is so hot, and because I am using cast iron, I try to keep a pretty close eye on it kind of towards the end. I'm just going to make sure that, since it's cast iron, we'll want to pop it out pretty fast. We'll want to let it cool for a minute or two, then we're going to want to pop it out and onto a cutting board. Provided the crust is fully baked through at the bottom, which is always kind of the bit we have to be careful of, or mindful of, I should say. I can hear it sizzling. All right, yep, that's pretty good. So we're gonna go ahead and pull this back. I'm gonna grab my hot pads. We're gonna pull that out. Alrighty, so put this up here. Get it pointing down a little bit. It's actually probably a little bit better if I put it over on the other side. Easier to see instead of going across the entire kitchen. So I think that looks like a pretty nice pizza. But we're going to kind of take a look on the inside. So due to how this particular recipe is done, you don't preheat the skillet. The dough actually relaxes in the skillet for the last hour or two so that it fills it up. So for this recipe, we don't preheat the skillet. But I've done other recipes where you do preheat the skillet and then you drop the dough into it. They both work out pretty well, but this way is a little bit easier to just kind of do without as much time, which is why I did it today. But you end up with pretty similar results. I also just don't like handling lots of hot stuff if I don't need to. The more you handle hot stuff, the more likely it is you're going to get burnt. We're just going to pop this up, and the crust at the bottom actually does look pretty cooked, so we are good. So we're going to move this over here to what is hopefully going to be a decent position. I swear I spend most of my time futzing with camera angles. Alright. Set that there for just a second while we grab our spatula, which really need to get like a nice thin spatula that feels this a little bit better, but we're just going to kind of turn that out. I'll put that back over there. And that is our pizza. Crust is looking pretty good. I'm going to move the breadsticks up. So they get a little bit more of that radiant heat and they're off that pizza stone. And so yeah, here we are. It's our pizza. Entirely scratch made, which is always nice. Cuts pretty nicely, seems to hold cohesiveness pretty well. Let me show you guys kind of the cross section. Yeah, lots of cheesy goodness, which is what, you know, pizza is, right? Or pizza should be. But yep, so we've still got breadsticks coming out, so if you want to stick around and wait for that, you can. But otherwise, I think that's kind of the end of this. I know we've run a little bit longer than I originally planned, so thank you guys for sticking around. But yeah, we've got pizza, I've got dinner. I'm going to slice this up and start getting ready to serve it. So thanks for sticking around. If you've got any more questions, feel free to leave them in the chat and I'll answer them as I kind of cut stuff up. Try and make sure we don't pull the cheese off. With varying degrees of success. But yeah, thanks for hanging out and being on the stream. I'll be doing, I think it's Southwestern black bean salad on probably on Wednesday for anyone that wants to see that be done. but that's how you make pizza. All right, not seeing any questions, and the breadsticks look like they're going to take a little bit longer. So I'm going to go ahead and end this here. If you liked it, you know what to do. If you disliked it, you also know what to do. I think that every YouTuber is required to say that if you like their channel, then to subscribe and hit the little bell icon or something. I don't know. I'm not really a YouTuber, but I'll say it anyway and pretend I am. Anyway, hope you have a wonderful day, and thanks for hanging out.